Hey leader, David Burkus here, organizational psychologist and author of 4 best-selling books on helping leaders and teams do their best work ever. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how to get the most out of your team. That's really it, isn't it? Getting the most out of your team. That's what separates great leaders from mediocre or poor leaders. I mean, there's a whole lot more to it than that, but let's be honest, that's how we're judging whether or not somebody is truly a great leader. Great leaders have the ability to make the output of a team more than just the sum of its parts. They have an ability to foster, I don't know if you want to call it synergy or what you want to call it, but they have the ability to take the team to a level of performance that they didn't even know that they were capable of. And I think everybody agrees on this, but not everybody really agrees or even knows on how you can do that. What are the specific actions you can take? And so we end up reading another book, right? And we end up watching a TED Talk on how to become a little bit better leader, how to get the most out of your team. But we very rarely don't really understand the practical ways we can do that. Okay, so there is what the research says. I live in the world of what the research says, what you're gonna hear from the TED Talks or the books. But then there's what you can do on a day-to-day basis. And the purpose of this video is to talk about what you can do on a day-to-day basis, how to get the most out of your team, through the regular actions you can commit to. So we're gonna share 4 ways in this video that you can get the most out of your team. Yes, we'll talk about the research behind it, but more specifically, we'll talk about what you can do to get the most out of your team practically. Let's get started. So the first way you can get the most out of your team is to set objectives together. There's a growing body of research around this, right? And there's also just common sense that people who are involved in the decision-making of what the objective is, people who have a say in whether or not their goals, their quotas, their targets, their whatever is achievable, are much more likely to pursue those things. We know that people who already feel like they've made progress towards their goals are more likely to achieve them, and people who feel like they're stretching but also achievable are more likely to achieve them. And that's where the role of setting objectives together comes in. Unfortunately, most leaders, most large organizations, it's set by someone other than the specific team leader, right? I worked for a long time in sales organizations where quotas come down from some guy or girl or group of people looking at a spreadsheet and then deciding based on your territory, this is what the revenue is, and there's no conversation going there. And how much self-efficacy do you think those individual people have? Right? And that's why we're constantly trying to police those people from cooking the books, faking their numbers, shifting things around in order to play the quota game. Great leaders don't have time for that stuff. Instead, they're setting objectives together. Right? We're talking with the whole team and with individuals about here's where we need to go. I'm not willing to compromise that. Here's where we need to go. But what are maybe those milestones that we can go to get there? What are the objectives we have in the middle? Even better if we do this on a team-wide level, because something we might think one person would be perfect for is actually perfect for a different person. So it's not just that we're doing it collaboratively, it's that we're doing it together as a whole people. Not one-on-one collaboration, but total collaboration as a team, so that we're properly allocating assignments, roles, responsibilities based on true candor around who is best suited to do what. That will not only make sure that objectives get met more often because they're actually feasible, but it will ensure that people are motivated to pursue those objectives because they know that maybe they're a stretch, but they're definitely inside the realm of what we can achieve. And I had a role in declaring that, and so now I'm more motivated to pursue it. The second way to get the most out of your team is to teach your team to work out loud. Now, I didn't invent this term, but I love this term. I already spoke in the first one about the importance of candor. This is post-objective setting candor, if you want to think of it that way. So we set objectives together as a team, we figured out what we need to do, but now we need a regular system where people are kept informed about what everybody on the team is working on. If you're familiar with agile software development, the concept of a scrum, this is exactly what we're talking about. A regular meeting, a team huddle where people are coming together. In a daily stand-up or a scrum in agile, often that was structured around 3 questions. What did I just work on? What am I focused on next? What's blocking my progress? You can go a long way teaching your team to work out loud just by asking them to answer those questions on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be daily. It doesn't even have to be a conversation. It could be an email report that we send out every Monday. Every person on the team sending it out to everybody else, just giving them that status update. I know companies that are running hundreds of millions of dollars in operating revenue, and their teams keep each other informed with Google Docs spreadsheets, and they just update them on a 2-week cycle, right? So this is not something that has to be so complicated. This is just something that helps the team realize that it's not about individual relationships with you, the leader. It's about communicating to the whole team, because that is how we make sure that nobody's dropping the ball. That's how we make sure help happens faster and more accurately, and that's how we help get the most out of the team. The next way to help get the most out of your team is to teach them to turn conflict into collaboration. In other words, to teach them that conflict is okay as long as it's task-focused conflict, as long as it is focused on making the product or the project that we're working on better, as long as it's in the service of helping make individuals better, and it doesn't devolve into personal conflict. Unfortunately, we humans are not great at this. When you interact with a team that is great at this, you can sense it right away. Right? The level of what you might call radical candor, the level of honesty and transparency on the team is noticeable, it's palpable, and people aren't taking any of that feedback, even constructive feedback, personally. They're not getting defensive. But a lot of us struggle to do this. So if we're getting started on teaching the team to treat conflict as collaboration, to treat disagreements and dissent and even constructive criticism not as a personal attack, maybe start with this. Make a rule on your team, right? That we don't criticize people, we don't criticize ideas, but we can question assumptions behind those ideas. In other words, we can't say, that's a bad idea. We say, that's an interesting idea. I think I'm following you, but it sounds like you're making this assumption or this assumption. It sounds like you're assuming we have this much time, or it sounds like you're assuming this percentage of customers would be interested in that new initiative. Do we know that's true? Right? Questioning assumptions is two things. First of all, it forces the other person to rethink what they just proposed. Maybe they're wrong, maybe they know they're wrong, and it gives them a chance to edit or improve upon it. Even if they don't think they're wrong, right? Rethinking it helps them improve upon it. The other thing is if it doesn't do that, it at least gives us some questions that we have to pursue as a team in order to figure out and help sort of judge this idea. And of course, the third and the biggest thing it does is there's no personal attack in here. There's no idea attack in here. There's nothing that somebody can really take personally. There's just an honest questioning of, it sounds like you're making this assumption. You might be fine making that assumption, but I don't know that we have data on that yet. I don't know that we know that that's true, right? That's a much lower threat to receive than a criticism of the person or the idea. And it'll help your team treat conflict, feel okay with the idea of conflict, and almost see it as that form of collaboration, I guess because it is a form of collaboration. And the last way to get the most out of your team, this has less to do with their day-to-day performance, their collaboration, etc., and just how they interact with each other. And that is to find the uncommon commonalities. Help individual people on your team figure out what they have in common with specific members of the team. Uncommon commonalities is a term that a couple different organizational psychologists have used. It basically refers to the things that two people in a team have in common that nobody else in the team shares. Maybe that's a shared sports team or some shared experiences, like maybe they went to the same university, right? Or they grew up in the same part of the country. Maybe they just took they have the same like favorite vacation, whatever it is. We know that uncommon commonalities become what sometimes in the research is called a multiplex tie, an outside of work connection between two individuals. We know that's the breeding ground of friendships, and we know that people having work friends makes them more productive. We know that the whole team, from the research standpoint, makes them more productive. So help find those uncommon commonalities. You can do this in a bunch of different ways. My favorite two are to think about the unstructured time that we have with each other, whether that's just before a meeting or whether that's any sort of hangout time as we go to an event or a conference together. Think about those uncommon times and take advantage of them as opportunities for self-disclosure to the level that people are comfortable, but for people to talk about non-work stuff, to talk about their personal life. The other way you could do it is a little more intentional. Find ways to utilize icebreakers that aren't just fun, but actually help people share a bit more about themselves. And my favorite, I worked with a team one time that did an activity they call 3 snaps. And the idea was that right at the beginning of every weekly meeting, a different person would be chosen for 3 snaps, and they would go back and look through their social media, and they would choose 3 snaps, 3 photos, that helped people get a sense of who they were. This could be everything from pictures of their kids to pictures of them at the Roman Colosseum on their favorite Rick Steves imitation tour, whatever it is. The fact that I said Rick Steves right now is me building an uncommon commonality between, 10 10% of the people watching this video and myself. So little things like that build that sense of, oh, I did that too. And now we have something in common. We connect after the meeting to share more about it. And we have the beginnings of a friendship. We have created an environment that helps the team find uncommon commonalities, turn those into work friends. And we know that work friends make everybody, including the team, more productive. Now, these are not the only ways to get the most out of your team, but I think you'll probably notice what they all have in common. What they all have in common is the team culture, the habits and norms of behaviors. This isn't about some amazing productivity system or some new software platform to manage projects. I'm not interested in selling you those things, and the truth is I don't think those things work all that well if you don't pay attention to the culture of your team. But if you do pay attention to the culture of your team by setting objectives together, by working out loud, by transforming the way we think about conflict, and by building those uncommon commonalities, you can make just about any project management software work, right? If we're working out loud, we can figure out what works. We don't need the latest tip, trick, tool, software, whatever to do it, because we focused on the operating system of our team's culture. And when we do that, we build a team that helps get the most out of everybody and that helps the team as a whole do their best work ever.